conservation begins with Menora Hoyt. She was the booster for Joshua Tree National Park. Early on, the area was subjected to vandalism, and she wanted to protect Joshua Tree because of its unique flora and fauna and features. So, after her husband and her son died, she was an influential socialite in Pasadena and had the resources to make an impression, and that she did. In 1928, she brought 7 freight cars full of desert plants, flora, the beautiful flowers. And for the Garden Club of America, she set up an exhibition explaining the beauties of the desert. She was an early desert conservationist. Not only did she want to protect Joshua Tree, but she also protected Death Valley. And her impression lasted. And so in 1936, President Franklin Roosevelt set aside the Joshua Tree area as a national monument. Every national park has had someone that saw the potential or the beauty of the area, and Menora Hoyt saw the beauty of Joshua Tree. So after her influence, it became a national monument, and then finally in 1994, it became a national park. And I didn't always see the beauty of Joshua Tree because I'd come up from the southern entrance. And the southern entrance through the Cottonwood area reminded me a lot of the desert areas that I was already living in and very familiar with. There's really 2 portions of Joshua Tree. There's the Colorado area, which is the lower elevation areas, and then there's the Mojave area. If you come up through the area that's closest to the Salton Sea, that will bring you up to the southern entrance. Southern entrance to Joshua Tree has a couple features. There is a visitor center there. There's a couple easy walks. There's the Teddy Bear Koala Garden area. That is closed right now due to rehabilitation of the trail and the walkways that go through the cactuses. And then there's the Cottonwood Springs. It's actually like an oasis, and those areas are readily accessible, pretty easy walks. It's not like the elevation gain that you have on some of the other oasis hikes. Technically, 49 Palms you can access from 29 Palms, the town, and that's a more aggressive, a little more difficult hike. Also, that's probably true of the Anza Borrego Palm Canyon, which I love. It's one of my favorite oases in Southern California because you go just from bleak to beautiful. In the Palm Spring area, there's an entrance to another state park. It's called the Indian Canyon areas or the Indian Trails, and there's the Andreas Trail. There's the Palm Canyon Trail there. There's the Murray Canyon. There's Takowitz. There's a number of trails there that are pretty fantastic. And I've only done the 2. I've only done the Palm Canyon and the Andreas. But again, water in the desert really makes a beautiful landscape. Water in the desert is precious. We're going to start our story of Joshua Tree by talking about the Oasis of Mara. For probably 2,500 years, it was a crossing point for trade and on the various travel lines between the various Indians. And in the people groups, we have 4 major areas of people that are represented. The Kauia, which is the Indian group that I'm most familiar with. I grew up surrounded by their culture, and their culture is bounded to the north by the San Bernardino Mountains, to the south by Borrego Springs, to the east by the Colorado Desert, to the west by the San Jacinto Plain and the eastern slopes of the Palomar Mountain area. So if you're from the Inland Empire or San Diego, you're probably familiar with these Indians. They've shared a lot of their culture with us. I had the privilege of taking some cultural anthropology courses where we studied their ability to survive and adapt on the land. There's some other Indian tribes that I should mention. There are basically 4 that I'm familiar with. The Chemmi-Wavi, and they were another indigenous people. What's interesting about them is they are the southernmost reaches of the Paiute. And so they're represented today by the Colorado River Indian tribe. The Serranos is where we're going to start our story. The Serrano language is part of the Udo Aztecan language. The language made its way from the Aztec regions of Mexico all the way up to the west coast of California, all the way into the Great Basin, and it was why the Indians could trade with one another even if they were in different clans or tribes. The story of 29 Palms and the significance of the Mara Oasis is it was in the traditional areas of Joshua Tree, and it was a major trade route. A little more history. The first survey parties that were to arrive at 29 Palms, or specifically at the Oasis of Mara, found the area to be under cultivation by the Serrano Indians. They were actually growing corn, beans, pumpkins, and squash. That was amazing considering the native plants. They were very, very productive. The story was that in 1 year, the first year of settling there, that they should plant a palm tree for each boy that was born to the tribe. For 29 births of baby boys, they were recorded by planting palm trees, and that's where the name 29 Palms comes from. The prospectors arrived to California after the gold discovery at Sutter's Mill, but they also drifted into the desert looking for gold. The Anaconda mine began operation south of the Oasis of Mara in 1874. The other mines in the areas were Lost Horse, the Desert Queen, and these other claims soon followed. The sad thing is trees began to be cut at the Oasis and the water siphoned away to support growing mining operations. On the heels of the miners, cattlemen moved into the areas in the 1880s to take advantage of the high desert. They took advantage of the grasslands of the Pinto, the Little San Bernardino Mountains. The McCaney brothers ran an active cattle trade that was alleged to include stolen cattle that they pastured into the isolated rocky coves near Hidden Valley. Actually, the rumor had it that they actually hid cattle in some of those little basins, such as Hidden Valley, but we'll get to that later on.